Welcome, podcast listeners and viewers, and thank you for joining us on the LightWave Digest podcast, episode 6. We are here to bring you all the news, reviews, interviews on everything LightWave and beyond. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Hello, Andrew, and another episode of LightWave Digest. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a fun month. Lots of stuff's going on, gearing up towards Christmas, which for me is an expensive time of year because all my family seem to have birthdays in November and October and December. So yeah, never mind. But I love it. So let's press on with LightWave themes. I mean, I guess I could segue here into saying, well, you know, what would be a really good Christmas present this year? I think I know what I'm going to look forward to.
Oh, absolutely. And we will talk about that in the news section, but I want to sort of hear what have you been up to this week, this month, you know?
Myself personally, just doing lots of work, so I haven't had as much time to play with Lightwave and 3D stuff in general, but I have had a little bit of a play, wink, but I better not say more about that. But yes, busy. And yourself?
Oh, absolutely busy with work. I mean, yeah, the game that I'm working on right now has, you know, it's ebb and flows, I would say. And last week was a little bit of an flow. So, yeah. But yeah, I can say that Lightwave have saved my ass a couple of times
Good to hear.
for that project. So that's cool.
Good to hear. No, it's good that that even though you're in a big studio, and that sometimes can mean that you don't get to use Lightwave because it's not always on the list, but it's such a versatile tool. A lot of people use it as that little handy toolbox.
Yeah, exactly. It's. I mean, we have 4 licenses of it, or 5 licenses of Lightwave at work. So it's not like I'm using my own version or anything like that. It's. We have licenses for it, and when I see it, you know, it fit and actually solves a problem, then I use it. You know, it's one of those things. But one of the things I also want to mention is that we actually have a very, very cool guest, and that is Chris Zapara.
Oh, wow, yes.
Oh, yeah, and that interview this is going to be the longest episode ever for Lightwave Digest, because when I started editing the interview, there were so many things that he said that was like, we can't let this go. We can't, I can't cut this. It's like, yeah, it's so amazing. So guys, stick through that, and if you get tired of listening, just make a mental note or note down where we are in the video, and go back to that and listen through the whole thing, because this guy has so many funny stories, and also he's worked on so many things that all of us have seen, you know, on television.
So many cool things. Yes. Very cool guy.
And during that interview, it's me and you, Andrew. So
it is.
Let's go on to the news.
So what's the big news this month then? Yes.
Yeah. Lightwave Digital have actually put out 2 reels. The anime reel, and then there is another reel that is called the medical reel.
Yes, I've seen that one, yeah.
And then we also have the FrightWave, which was the competition that Lightwave Digital announced a couple of months ago, I guess.
You need a good lead up to get people have a chance to actually make something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, let's start talking about the Lightwave 3D anime reel.
Yeah, that's well, I mean, I occasionally, I'm not an expert, dabble in anime, and yes, there's been a bunch of these I've actually seen, and they're very impressive technically and artistically, brilliant stuff. I'm sad enough to say I've watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it is very bizarre, and I recognize all of that stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen that episode. It's mental. Really good stuff. The Japanese Batman is so strange, wonderful though. And I think there's actually a couple on there that even on that I've seen and I know is in there. But what they've got is some of the best examples and some really really good. Um, it's in a way it's surprising to me how big Lightwave still is in the 3D space. With in Japan, and long may it continue. I hope that the team can build up a relationship and continue with it, because obviously the Japanese animators are getting huge, amazing, stylish work out of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I looked at it and I was like gobsmacked at some of this stuff that they'd shown. I was like, was this done in Lightwave? Oh, it
Oh, I know
was,
it.
you know.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of those things that you start to giggle like, what the heck is going on, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And also on the anime reel, the comments on that reel is absolutely fantastic. People are loving that reel.
yeah.
It's such a good reel. And again, we need to credit Anthony Hall, or
Yes,
what is his? He is called What is he called? Andy Hall, right?
Anthony, but he tends to go by Tony. To be
Tony,
honest,
Tony. Okay, not Andy. Tony Hall. Yeah, we need to
Tony. Oh
credit
yeah.
him. Yeah, because
Yeah, and
he's
I know for a fact he's a big anime fan as well, so he'll have probably enjoyed putting that together.
yeah, but he's actually been the guy that have put all these reels together. So
Yes,
applause.
and as far as I know, he does all of these voluntarily. He's put these together to showcase and show how great Lightwave can be, and he's
Oh,
yeah, he's an educator, and so he's long been dabbling and putting together tutorials. If you've ever followed his
yeah, yeah,
YouTube
yeah,
channel,
yeah.
and he looks out there. He's looking out for content creators, examples, and inspiration for himself and his students. So, um, great stuff, and obviously that's how he's got the cross skills to do all of this type of thing. Um, but yeah, he's a great guy, and he's put a huge amount of effort into these, and they're really good.
Yeah, I didn't know that he actually did this for free. Is that what you're saying? That he's actually voluntarily doing this to help?
As 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 far as I know, yes.
Oh, wow,
If
that's
someone wants to correct me, feel free. But I'm pretty sure he's putting these together for free.
wow. Yeah, that's super awesome. I mean, yeah. So let's go on to the next reel then, the medical reel.
Yes, some very impressive visuals on here. It's another weird little one, and I think this is because with Lightwave being a kind of like a small studio like compatible software, there's a lot of like these solo guys out there producing things like medical animations. Where I mean, it'd be really difficult to build a big company out of it, wouldn't it?
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah, true.
so there's a lot of one man bands, and they've produced some really beautiful stuff for showing all sorts of weird medical stuff. Really cool. I mean, shout out for my friend Luis. He works at Nimus. I think you know him, don't you?
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's the same place where Luke Whitehorn works as well.
That's right. Yes, yes. So I chat with Luis a lot,
Yeah.
and he's a really really nice guy, very very talented, lightwave artist.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And some of the stuff they put out are mind blowing. I mean, I think they do a lot of their simulations in Houdini,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
but they do a lot of the rendering and stuff, and all sorts of other things within Lightwave itself. But yeah, there's some lovely things, very nicely rendered. obviously it's very complicated trying to do things like cutaways and all sorts. Which actually that's an interesting one, taking it as a side step. The showing the live Boolean. I bet that'll make the medical animators' lives a little bit easier, won't it?
Oh, true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's maybe you can step down one step from using Houdini and actually do things directly in LightWave.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But that'd be some really good bread and butter. Oh, I can't talk. Bread and butter work there for the animators, being able to do, cutaways into complicated geometry on the fly. That'd be brilliant for them.
Yeah, I mean, I barely can speak either because I'm super excited, because
Yeah.
we have one more thing that we want to talk about regarding art, and then we have another thing that we also want to talk about regarding the release date. But yeah, moving on to the Halloween competition,
Yeah.
the FrightWave.
It's I'm being quite surprised at some of the quality of the artwork. Very different styles, and
Yeah.
I do sometimes feel that it's a little bit unfair for anybody being in a competition with David Aguero, because every time he knocks it out of the park, he's so talented. It'd be like, are you taking part? Well, never mind, I'm not going to bother. But he really, really is very good at putting these competition pieces together. It's a very creepy Halloween theme that he's put together. But I love the second and third places and the honorable mentions. There's some really lovely artwork.
Oh yeah, the second one is actually an animation thing.
Isn't it? You don't very rarely see animation coming out of Lightwave, so it's fun. Although I'm
Yeah.
still puzzled as to why the pumpkin's not orange. That's strange. But the animation's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it looks like motion capture to me, but
It does, but he's got cloth sim, which is impressive.
yeah. I mean, I'm that was not a dig. If you use motion
No, no,
capture,
no.
because motion capture is never perfect, you need to polish motion capture.
Oh, absolutely.
So I mean, it just looked like the base of the animation was based on motion capture dance there, and it would be interesting to know if this was something that he might have motion captured himself using neural motion.
It might be. I don't actually know. There's no. It would be nice to have a little bit of a making of for some of
Yeah,
these.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe we should tell them to do that, because I mean, even the third place one. I love the NPR style.
Oh yes,
That in
that
and of
one.
itself is great, and the folding box, that's very clever.
Yeah, that's actually quite cool. It was one of those. It's sort of like, oh, I'm seeing this cool animation, and then it turns into a product.
Into a product, that's a very it's almost like a portfolio piece. That's very
Yeah,
good.
that's very clever, actually. Very clever.
It is. That'll do him well, I think, for like for using it. Even though he sadly didn't win the competition, but I certainly think he won in terms of the quality of his animation. So yeah, I'd love to see some doing some making ofs for some of these. It'd be really good.
Yeah, and then we also have the special mentions of contributions from Roy K, Lin Zhu, and Oscar Palma as well.
Yes, there's some lovely pieces. It would be nice if they could have actually put everything on. Maybe they'll do a page at some point in the future. I don't know. Because I saw some of the on the Discord, people were like sharing ideas and bouncing, and not everybody finished, not everybody sadly gets to win, but I think there was some really cool explorations, and it would be nice to see them all put together on one page. So maybe we should ask them if they can do that in the future. That'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's what I miss about the forums. You can't, we would have all just sort of went, oh look, there it is, all there on the forums. Hopefully, we'll have one soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
So, well, we don't exactly know what's going to get released this month, if anything. I think from what I was looking at on the Discord, there may be a pre-production release which won't have all the features that are finished. and I think that'll be sometime in the next few weeks, or depending on when this is released. Of course, it might be already out. We'll wait and see, won't we?
So this is what Elmar wrote in the Discord chat that is open for everyone. So it's not it's in the basic jammering. So he wrote this. There will be some features that won't make it to the November 28 release. So November
Oh.
28 is there's going to be a LightWave 2023 released. But however, as he said, some features will not make it into it because there are bugs and things like that. So it will be available as early access until they actually ship.
Right. So it looks like what they're going to do is take the as a preview, or probably not worth using it as a production tool, but just to show some of the features and giving that to the people who backed the project, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Then everybody can have a little play with the new features and toys, and I think that people are going to like them. But some things aren't going to make that release, apparently. So we'll find out what will and what won't. I
Yeah,
think some things are a bit bigger, are a bit bigger and more complicated, and some things are less so, or are more complete. So I
yeah,
guess we'll see on November the 28th. Right. I think that's enough waffle.
yeah,
Um, and I think we should get on with the interview because there's quite a lot of it.
yes. Let's go on to the interview.
Well, enjoy.
Hello and welcome to tonight's guest. 3 Emmys and 3 VES-Awards, and one of the people turning one sentence from a script into an iconic sandworm capture scene in Children of Dune. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, nice to be here.
So, the usual question I have is I want to ask you about, your history, can you take us back when you started to find out computers and was it games, what computers were there and so on, because I do know that you like games as well.
Yes, yes, yes. I started playing games in maybe 1976, way back
Oh,
when. My dad liked gizmos, and he had a Fairchild Channel F. You can look it up. It is the first video game system that used cartridges,
aha.
and you could dig it up and go, I can't believe anyone enjoyed this, but so yeah, we played that, and then into I believe it was the Bally Astrocade, which actually had a cartridge for BASIC, which was the first time I ever wrote a program. I was probably 9 or 10. Um, I never really turned it into a career, but I did start that early, and then see the Mattel in television. We played a lot of that, and then from there, the VIC-20, the Commodore 64, and then in the mid 80s, I got an Amiga 1000 and never looked back. We
Wow.
had, yeah, that's when it all started, I guess. I was in high school and started doing computer animation back then.
Oh, so was that in 3D or was it 2D or?
No, it was in 2D. Actually, I was going to be a 2D animator for halfway through about college, I think. That's what I wanted to do, but we'll get to that. But no, I mostly played with video construction set from Electronic Arts, and then Aegis Animator. That was a big one. I saw at some animation film festival. I don't remember who it was. You guys might know, but there was a guy who really, really pushed that to its limits, and I was just amazed by the work he did, and I emulated it quite a bit. And I was just really into the fact that you could create graphics over time and play them back. And if you had a VCR with a pause button, you could sync it to music. And it was just I was hooked.
Wow. And that was on the Amiga 1000, I guess.
That was on the 1000.
Yep.
Later on, I purchased a 2500, which I have no idea who else ever had a 2500, but had one of those. And when I was in university at University of California, San Diego, uh, the person who is now my wife, she ran the media department. Well, kind of the tech room, the media department. She worked in there, and she had they had all the tape decks and method to get 16 millimeter film onto video. So she ran all that stuff. But early on, they went to a conference and saw the video toaster,
Mm.
and they picked one up because of the character generator. And I think they had like toaster number 20 or something like that, just one of the very early toasters, the 1.0. And so she kind of really got into that, her and one other person. And everyone came in and do their titles, their scrolls, and all that. And then, of course, as you've probably heard a million times, there was that little 3D button, and
Mm, yeah, yeah.
she started tinkering with that, and I saw that, and I got into it. And I had tried to do some 3D on the Amiga with like Sculpt 3D, and I think I tinkered once with Videoscape, but couldn't really focus enough to get into it. But looking on at what we all know as LightWave now, uh, really enjoyed it and picked up a secondhand video toaster card, and went through the the hellish experience of installing 20 some floppy disks or whatever.
And you only had
Well,
one floppy drive, right?
yeah, yeah, only one floppy drive on that machine. Well, I had a second one, but I don't know if it even worked with two at a time. But yeah, you get to disk 23 and you get a failure, you have to start over. But
Oh god.
I got that, and I don't even know if I ever used it for anything uh, except for Lightwave. Maybe the only other thing I did was plug my television into it, and I found out if you turn it on and get the pass through to work, you can turn it off and the pass through still worked. And if you had your background on the Amiga set to black, it would be your TV screen. So you could overlay your Amiga onto the TV. I think that was the only other thing I used it for.
Ah,
But
okay.
yeah, started playing with 3D animation, and then after I graduated, um, my future wife and I, we got together, and then we ended up moving in together, and we both had our Amigas. And around that time, I think was that version 4. They had a preview version, which I call version 3.9999. I could be off by one, but that's when they first did the PC version. And we went out and we bought, I think it was a Pentium 90,
Mm, yeah.
uh, and did a little test. I think we had the default crayon do this with some motion blur, and hit F9 on the Amiga and on the Pentium. And well, we didn't look back from that because the Pentium was just so much faster. And since we weren't really using the toaster much anymore, we just needed Lightwave, so we started doing that. Did a
Oh,
couple
yeah.
pro- did a couple projects together, and at that time I was going to go to UCLA to do traditional animation. In college, I had done traditional animation and even optical printing, so I was old school analog at the time. And I started doing the traditional animation, cell animation, and I quickly realized that I didn't really have the draftsmanship to keep on it and keep on model, which means you're drawing and drawing. By the time you get to the other end, you're a completely different character. But I had trouble with that. But at the same time, we were playing with this little Day of the Dead animation, and came out really nice. And I ended up showing it at the end of the first semester, and people were pretty amazed by it. And I think she got a job at a game company, got me a job at the game company, so I quit school and it was grad school, quit grad school, and started working there. From then, we got a job doing, I think, one or two quick shots on a low budget action movie, probably 1K or maybe even D1 resolution, who knows. I think it was a cable breaking apart. We did that in animation in LightWave, maybe 20 frames long. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And from there, we found through another friend, there was a company out in northern LA in Chatsworth, and they were a traditional animation company, but they were getting this film, and they needed someone to do digital effects, and so they didn't really know anyone. So that guy brought in my wife and I, and we started kind of learning on the spot doing digital effects for a feature film, which turned out to be the much maligned sequel to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie called Power Rangers Turbo. And
Okay.
it's probably free on YouTube. You could probably watch it, and it's a lot of animated lens flares. And I think we went to another conference, and they had this new program called Particle Storm, because
Mm.
LightWave didn't have a particle solution at the time. But this particle storm was amazing, watching things fly around, and there was magic and you know uh, lights and stuff going on in this Power Rangers movie. So we got a copy of Particle Storm, and the wizard would move stuff, and we do the particles, and they bounce off the ground, and it was just amazing to us. And that movie came and went, and they moved on to another movie for Saban, who owned Power Rangers. Uh, and it was after Babe had come out, and they wanted to do a talking animal movie, and I think it was called Rusty a Dog's Tale, and I think it was Tale. So I think that was a missed opportunity. But we learned how to morph on the fly with was that elastic reality. So we would just morph hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shots. They had dogs, they had goats, they had cows, they had mice, they had birds, they had an elephant, they had turtles, they had a pig. They had every animal except a pig, which I thought was weird. But we did hundreds and hundreds of shots of that. And then my wife got a job at Disney in their digital department. So she went and did that. I ended up doing a TV pilot called Martian Law, and it was a Western on Mars, which later on, of course, Firefly kind of made space Westerns popular. But it was, I think it starred A. Martinez, who is on TV all the time these days. But he was a marshal on Mars, in a dome city, which is weird because inside the dome city was an old Western town with wood and everything. They shot on the Universal lot. And it was actually the first time I ever worked on a film set, which was amazing because you're there on the film set and you see the tram go by that you've been on these tours if you've ever been to Universal Studios. And they're waving at you and you're waving at them, going, "You don't know who I am." But it was pretty cool to be on a film set. And later on at the end of the show, spoiler alert, he got this flying motorcycle, which in when it was in ground mode, it was basically a four-wheeled ATV. But the model maker, Brick Price of Star Trek fame and a million other things, he built these close-ups of the wheels go in, and then it was a CG guy on a CG bike zipping around, and so it'd have the live plates and it would have the stuff go. And I think we composited that in Lightwave because I didn't know any compositing tools. So that was just all LightWave stuff. He was flying around, and later on, I think the bad guy was David Carradine, and the big shot is he got shot by this disintegration ray and had to be exploded out. So I got to supervise David Carradine in that. And then from there, we did a few other things that I don't quite remember, little demos and things like that,
do,
and
do, you-
maybe
do
another
you
show.
remember? Do you remember roughly what version of Lightwave this was?
This
Was it?
would be around 1997. So maybe 4. I don't think 5 had been out yet. So probably version 4. See, we had lens flares, obviously we had bones. I think it was still all wireframe. Um,
Mm.
so I'm guessing 4.
Ah, okay.
From there, I got a job at Netter Digital,
Mm.
who at the time had just just started their in-house department, and they just well, they had their in-house department. They had just finished season 5 of Babylon 5, and we're working on those straight to video movies. I don't remember if I did a shot or two on those. I don't remember. But I went in to work on Voltron, which was a 3D animated version of the anime Voltron. And that was actually quite fun because, um, you get the script and they go, okay, the lion's got to go through and all these space battles and blow up stuff. So again, learning on the fly how to animate stuff and get it on the farm and get it out. I think at some point we were doing 22 minutes in 5 days, and that's with motion capture, with lip sync, hand lip sync, which I was actually pretty good at because I had done lip sync back when I was doing hand drawn animation. Um, but it was fun flying those lions around and then putting explosions on cards with an alpha channel. So it was again all lightwave, no compositing at the time. Um, and then from there, I think I moved into Crusade, which was the short-lived sequel to Babylon 5.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Again, you sometimes there would be storyboards, but they were more suggestions. Usually, it was just, all right, there's a battle, there's all these planes or spaceships, and you blow them up. There'd be a title card, and they're usually 5 seconds long. And the joke was, they were 5 seconds long no matter what. It was guy lifts his gun and shoots, 5 seconds. Or spaceship takes off from the atmosphere, flies through space up to the Excalibur and lands in the dock in one shot, 5 seconds. So that fortunately the editor's right up the stairs, so you can move stuff around. I did that for a while, and at that point we moved into Dan Dare, Pilot of the Future, based on the popular British comic book. And at some point in there, I went to Flat Earth Productions and worked on Starship Troopers. So there were 3 studios, I think, working on Starship Troopers at the time. There was Foundation Imaging, there was us, and I believe there was, or if it was Rainmaker, maybe I forget. I think they're out in Phoenix. I don't remember who it was,
Yeah.
but Flat Earth went under primarily because of that, and they did some movies after that, but I went back and did Dan Dare, and then moved on to Area 51. Um,
Mm.
Tim McHugh and Glenn Campbell, who were OG visual effects wizards, going back to the original Tron, Buck Rogers, Battlestar Galactica, and Blade Runner.
Wow.
Yeah. Just they had amazing stories, and you should probably get Glenn onto this channel if you haven't already, because he's running all the stuff for Asylum right now,
Okay.
and he's got stories going back forever. That guy will talk for hours, and you're just sitting there like this the whole time.
That's what we love, though.
That was great. So they needed more crew to do the Dune miniseries, and
Mm.
so I came in, and it was me and Scott Wheeler and Justin Hammond and a few other animators, Don McCoy. And we, again, were just given a bunch of stuff and making things up. And at one point, I believe they shot like the big climactic battle when, they burst through the walls at Arakeen and have the big fight between the Fremen and the Harkonnen. And they had a lot of battle stuff, just guys fighting, but they didn't really have a third act, a big battle. And so they asked us, what can we do? And we just started making up shots. Tim was doing the raptors flying through the wall. We had some motion capture that we did up at Foundation. So we had CG Fremen running around and being blown up, and we were just making up shots. I remember I was ripping off shots from Apocalypse Now. Like there's a battle scene and it, pans up and the Raptors fly over. That there's definitely a shot in Apocalypse Now with the helicopters doing that. And I just was always amazed at the choreography that they pulled off. So it's much easier to do it in CG. But we did that. And then from there, I went to Foundation Imaging and worked on Voyager with, of course, the late, great Ron Thornton, and met a bunch of the other guys who worked there who I've worked on and on with for years. Actually, that's where I first met Kevin Quattro, Q.
Yep.
So I was supposed to work on Voyager, help out on an episode for about 4 weeks, and ended up being there for a year. And then actually near the end of that, Voyager was just ending, and the Emmy nominations had come out, and didn't give it a second thought. And then suddenly we got nominated for an Emmy for Dune, and we had no idea that was going to happen. We were just gobsmacked. If you've seen Dune, they shot the whole thing with these weird backgrounds. It was very, very theatrical, almost operatic, and it wasn't this giant expanse that you would want it to be, like the Denis Villeneuve film. So we didn't think that was going to fly, because it hindered the visual effects and the visuals. I mean, it was a stylistic choice that we weren't really into. It is what it is, right? But so when we were nominated, it was crazy, and we all went to the Emmys kind of on a lark, just to have a good time and just be happy to be nominated, because we were up against Walking with Dinosaurs, I think, and there was just no way that was going to happen.
Wow.
And I remember, we're there having a good time, wondering who was going to win, and then they called our name, and all of us just went, "What?" We didn't even get up for a few seconds. Because, what? Stumbled up there, all like wide-eyed, wondering what was going on. And that was, obviously very exciting and a whirlwind, and we were just amazed. And I think that was on a Saturday, and then Sunday we're still just high on adrenaline. I drove back to San Diego, showed the Emmy to my parents, and had a great time. And Monday went back to work, and the guys at Foundation, I was still at Foundation, the guys at work had won for Voyager. So everyone's super happy, just amazing. They brought their Emmys in and taking pictures with the rest of the crew. And then Tuesday morning was 9/11. And that just shut everything down. But yeah, sorry to bring the interview down, but it's a big, big change. And obviously gave us a lot more perspective on everything. But went back to work after a day or two, and soldiered on. And then at the same time, I was kind of freelancing with Area 51, doing Hart's War. They were one of the vendors there, doing a lot of smaller effects, some explosions, and animating bits of wood and things flying around. I think they did some crowds of the POWs escaping. So I was helping them with that. And then from there, I think I went back to Area 51, because at that point they had started on Children of Dune. And they said, "Hey, can you come back? Because we kind of like those sandworms." But the sandworms, well, not sandworms, the show was going to be in HD, which was really new. I mean, Dune was D1 widescreen, so 720 by 480 with a wide pixel, and this was going to be high def. And first off, how are we going to render that? There's just that's 4 times bigger. Well, 3 times bigger.
Yeah.
And we were kind of wondering. So we actually, and we did this all through even Battlestar Galactica years later. we rendered at 720 and just scaled it up. So all that stuff you've seen through, well, some of Enterprise was done at full HD, but a lot of it was done at 720 and upres.
Yeah.
But Dune was great. Children of Dune, sorry, was great because we had a lot of freedom because we, had a little bit of cachet, and but that's still one of the things I look back the most fondly was they had a script line that said, "So they capture the sandworm,"
Yes.
and I'm like, "Okay, let's see how we do this." And like, how would they capture a sandworm? Well, let's see. Sandworms can't touch water, so maybe they find some water in one of those Fremen cisterns. They kind of pen it off. That may have come from production. I forget that they were going to do something with water, and so I storyboarded out this whole thing. I didn't storyboard it actually. I did animatics in LightWave.
Yeah.
Animated. I knew the guys were going to be live, so I just had these dolls that moved and shoved off frame. But by then, I had the sandworm mostly worked out, built, and it was all rigged up in Relativity, which
Mhm.
I love that plugin, and hope that gets integrated into the next version because it's great.
Isn't it already integrated, by the way? Relativity 2.
It is in Lightwave because I know they bought it from Prem, but it's not integrated. It's still its own thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only thing they did is Prem had jokingly, because he had all these professors and doctors, and he
Mm.
had them with a German accent, said, "What is the variable you want to?" And I think they just took that out and made it standard English. But I remember I had the sandworm all rigged up. Of course, it had IK to do this, but it was one null to open the mouth, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
another null to how much do you want the teeth to waggle. It had a null for peristaltic motion, so it could do this. The tail can move that way. It was all rigged up in Relativity. It was just a lot of fun to do. But I put all that together, and Don McCoy built the carryall that lifts it up. I
Mm.
built the cage system that lifts it up, and again, and Don had free reign too. He just made up that model out of thin air, and we went and directed some motion capture of the guys running away and doing their thing on the wide shots. And when they shot it in Prague, they had my animatics, and I just had the guy going like this. The guy looks up because I was just doing the animatic and knowing that that's where the guy's going to stand and do his thing. Lo and behold, when the plates come back in, they have the Czech actor just go like that. There's just you know they were just mimicking what I did, but without any. I thought, no, he's supposed to act. He's supposed to do something.
That's so funny.
And if you watch it, there's a scene where he just goes like this.
Yeah.
But let's see, we did that, and actually, when the DVD came out, they had a behind the scenes. They had the storyboards of that sequence, and I'm going, well, that's interesting because there are no storyboards of this sequence. That's what they do. And literally, they had taken my animatics and traced them.
Oh God,
I
this
had
is
the
so funny.
sequence writing in a picture in picture, and then they just have these tracings of my animatics. I'm like, oh, hey, whatever.
Yeah, it makes me think
So,
of college. It makes me think of college. When you did your final design on day one, and then you made a load of sketches of what you pretended your design process was.
oh yeah, that's my work. Yeah,
Yeah,
you work backwards from the final.
Oh God,
Yeah, that was
that's a funny story. That is such a funny story. But it also is telling that you guys had so much freedom back then, as well
oh
as
yeah.
a creative
Yeah, not
artists.
just at Grade 51, but at Foundation, at Netter, at EdenFX later on, and even at Zoic, uh, which I started, I think. Well, from there I went to Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
mm.
and then over to Eden for Enterprise, and then went back for Serenity, the Firefly movie,
Mm.
Battlestar Galactica, and all that. But all those times we had a lot of freedom. And first off, it was just early on, it was just because, hey, we need all these visual effects and let's just get them all out. And so, the people with the most knowledge of cinematography and shot layout are, kind of became leads on that. And, I had a film background, film school background, was one of my majors, was film. And we could block these shots out. And then of course working with these people who have been doing visual effects for, at that point, at least 25 years, we all knew what we were doing. Some of us had just learned what we were doing, but we were pretty good at what we did at the time, and it was fun to just make stuff up. Later on, like of course the big studios, when you have a big pipeline, you do get pigeonholed, or your job is usually pretty focused.
Mm.
There's less room for a generalist at bigger studios, but in these smaller mid-range studios, you have a lot of freedom to do stuff. And even when I was a supervisor, I was still doing shots. But uh, yeah, that's kind of fallen down because especially now, unless you're on doing quote non-effects shows, these big shows, are basically features. They have feature budgets, they have feature pipelines, they have feature needs. And so it's a feature mindset. So yeah, you've got very specific things. You have someone who models, you have someone who shades, you have someone who surfaces, you have someone who lights, you have someone who animates, you have someone who does camera, you have someone who composites.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And and if there's a problem, you got to go back to that, bring it back in. And I do I do a lot of the full generalist stuff now in very small boutique settings, but I do miss being in a group of 15, 20 people all going script to screen. That was great.
Mm.
Nostalgic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when we talked to Q, he sort of said something like the studios had to become factories of shots,
Yes. Now that it's out of
and it's a business, right? So you have to sort of follow whatever is the industry demands.
absolutely. It is, yeah, it's a business. And I always said that it's rarely pretty when art and commerce collide, but we do get some pretty stuff out of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But so you were at Area 51 when you did Children of June,
Yes.
and then after that, I didn't follow really. Did you go back to did you go to Zoic after that, or what happened?
Um, Area 51, let's see. I forget if it was after Dune. I think it was after the first Dune. I think that was right when LightWave 6 came out. I stayed on. We did a couple movies and some pilots. We did a movie with directed by Martha Coolidge. I think it was called The Flamingo Rising. There were a couple visual effects things, and one of them was a sequence where an airplane is flying, dragging these fireworks, and the fireworks get out of control and hit the plane falls down. And that was cool because we had to do CG fireworks, and that was the first version where you could see the hypervoxels in the layout.
Ah, okay.
So when you had the fireworks explode, you had the particles blow up, and then you could see the sprites stretch out and do the thing, and that was a huge help.
Hmm.
Because we were still working in 5. I think it was the secret studio version 5.7. I think I don't remember if that was the first version that had split channels, but it had some cool features that were designed for the studios at the time. I think 5.5 was the only one that was publicly available. I forget, but I'm pretty sure it was 5.7, the secret version. So we were going back and forth because 6 did have a lot of bugs because it was the first version with UVs. It was the first version with a lot of other stuff. But those seeing the voxels in GL was just transformative. And I remember Scott Wheeler and I just went, all right, we've got to make the jump no matter what. So we buckled down and got through it, and we pulled that movie off in 6.0.
Wow.
Yeah, but from there, I went to after Children of Dune, I went to Zoic to do the finale of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So that show had been going on for 7 years.
Mm.
Yeah, so I only worked on one episode, which was the last episode. But I remember that because they sold it to me like this. They said, okay, so Joss Whedon just saw the Two Towers and he wants to do the Battle of Helm's Deep. And I went, well, that's nice. How many months do we have? And he goes, well, we have, I don't know, 2 months or something. Um, so I was on set for that, supervising the live action parts, but all the really wide shots with the Hellmouth were obviously CG. So we had crowds of thousands of vampires, and we had them running, and climbing the walls. And then I think the slayers were up top with axes, and they would fly off and fall down. And that was I for that sequence from the CG standpoint, because it was, we had a compositing department. That was just me and Q, I think. Just making stuff up. And, I was running the mocap part, and I think I laid out the Hellmouth, the cave, and did all the choreography of the animation. And he did a lot of the dynamics of like when they vaped, he would make the bones slide. But I think the two of us did almost all of that sequence ourselves. At that point, they had we were using we bake the mocap into MDD files and then place them on particles. I think it was particles. It could have been plain. I forget how we did that. But we had them, running through, and it was hard to do the offsets with the MDD files because you had 1,000. How are you going to do that? And we brought in Brad Herman, who his first job was on Starship Troopers with us. And he had since, I think, gone to Digital Domain. He did a lot of work at Digital Domain. That guy's a genius programmer. And he wrote a program for us that later became, he called it Q-Tip. And that was based on the Phantom Menace. Famously, the big crowd at the pod racing scene, all those things were just Q-tips. So this was his crowd solution. And what it would do is it would take a series of MDD files and a series of models, and it would mash them together and randomize them all and give you a scene with X amount of crowds. And it was huge help. And I think it was the first time that we had custom software made for us too. It was pretty neat. But I believe since it was MDDs and characters and there was no instancing, we had to have it all in memory. There wasn't a lot of memory back then, but I think we were able to get like 450 or so vampires running at once. And of
Wow.
course, we needed thousands, so we would do them in chunks, which is funny because that's how you do live crowd replacements. Is usually you have a chunk here, and then you do a chunk here, and you do a chunk here, and you composite them all together. We just did it back to front, so we just they would lay into each other. But yeah, that was all custom MDD code. And back then, MDD was like, oh, that's just for cloth. But then you realize, no, it's a file cache. You can use it for anything. And we kind of felt like we were hijacking the cloth system. But that was also a lot of fun. And Q and I were just in our own little room doing stuff. And then from there, I think that's when I went to EdenFX under John Gross, and a lot of the guys who were formerly at Foundation and had worked on season 1 of Enterprise, which I had worked on about half of the first season. They were now on season 3. And so I jumped into that, and we did all of season 3 together. And actually, we won an Emmy for the last episodes of that season. And that was weird because that was, that Star Trek pipeline had been established back in the 90s, from, Deep Space Nine and Voyager. The same guys. You had Dan Curry and you had Ron Moore and Mitch Susskind doing all the supervision. And the Foundation guys were there from day one. And also the EdenFX guys, because they were in Digital Muse before that. So it was like this back and forth, and these guys have been a family for years and years. So that was neat, coming into a very established pipeline, a very established group of people. And they knew which artists were good at one thing. They would character animation. You get John Teska, who I think is still at ILM now. He's a brilliant animator, and they had him do all the cool stuff and some of the really big effect sequences. Give it to John. And if you had to make up a beautiful city, give it to David Morton. He knew what he was. He was just he's this amazing concept artist, and he just would do everything in LightWave on his own. He just, Dave, what you got now? Is it done? Yeah, it's done. It's just, of course, it looks fantastic. And again, we were kind of making things up. Of course, the models were all pre-designed and built in-house, but we had all the design from production, and the sets were designed from production. But we were kind of making up our shots, and the supervisor would come in and help direct. But that was near the tail end of the script to screen, I think, was on Voyager. So we were also, for the most part, doing our own compositing, with the exception of the phasers. The phasers were still done in the edit bay on Flame, and we would do our regular, what you see on screen, the cool lighting, and then we would have to do basically an RGB raw pass. It was a flat pass, but it was basically RGB raw of the same thing. And then the flame artist would connect the dots with their phaser effect, and then they'd mask out a little window of the RGB, so it looked like it was lit up by the phasers. And so they would do all that in Flame, and we wouldn't even see it. And they needed to know, where to put explosions. We would do the explosions, but they would need to know where all the hits were going to be. And so we'd have explosions, and they'd be temp explosions on cards, old school style. And when a client would see it, who wasn't one of the supervisors, the producers, the directors, they don't always, and you see this all the time, they don't always understand what a temp is. Even if they know it's temp, if our animatics look too good, they think, well, it's not going to look like that, is it? They think it's going to look like that, and they're, of course, understandably underwhelmed because it's not done. It's not lit. It's not choreographed. There's just a card of an explosion, but it looks too good. It's kind of the uncanny valley of visual effects, but not with humans. So one solution, like we did in Area 51, is our animatics, we make sure they're in black and white, and make sure they all had watermarks of frame counters and shot names and temp written all over it. But on Enterprise, we came up with the boom text, which was a little cartoon explosion line with the word boom on it. And we didn't use explosion cards. We just had boom, 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 like a little comic book. So we're doing a layout. Okay, just add the boom text, and we'll send it over to editorial and see how it goes. So, and that worked out really well because it was exactly what they needed. They knew that it wasn't real, obviously, and they could lay it all out, knew where everything would go. They'd give us back direction, and then knew that at that point they could trust us that we were going to make it beautiful. But that middle ground had to be navigated. If it was too good, okay, we're shooting for final. That usually didn't happen right away. If it's too bad, they don't understand what it's going to be, and the middle ground is a little dangerous because they go, it's not going to look like that, is it? So we found this middle ground in maybe the first third where you could see where the color is, you can see where the lighting's going to be, you can see where the planets are, but the explosions are boom text. It was like a color.
Nice. Yeah, I sort of know about that issue with the certain directors that I worked with can't make the decision on choreography until they see the final render where everything is, and then they start to make changes.
And I think, anyone who's worked with clients knows, some clients are dead on, they know exactly what it is, and they're, they may say, okay, this is animatic, right? Or, this is temp. Okay. And they could rock it. But other clients, their expertise is elsewhere, or either they don't work with visual effects, or their other vendors have done it a different way. So it's not that they are incompetent in any way. They just, that's not their expertise. That's why they
Yeah,
hire artists, and you kind of have to train them in a way.
yeah,
Just like, they would have to train you, say, no, we need it like this because the set's got to end here because the firewall in the studio is right there. So that's as far as we can go. Or, the classic visual effects artist will say, why didn't they fix this on set? Why didn't they do this? And I've been a visual effects supervisor on set many times. And one of the things you have to do is know when fix it in post works. And,
yeah.
a film set is a very expensive proposition. You've got, 20 to 100 people on set, maybe more if you have a lot of extras. And they're sitting around. If you got to fix something, if you got to fix a light, a supervisor has to know, okay, how long will it take? 5 minutes? And you do the calculation in your head. Well, it's going to take X amount of dollars for an artist to fix that. And if it's going to take 5 minutes to fix, you just say, let it go. We'll fix it. Now, that artist may say, well, why didn't you fix it? Like, because you are 3 times cheaper than what it would have cost to do. I mean, there are, of course, lazy filmmakers who just say, I will do it all in post and don't even think about it. Anyone who's worked in visual effects knows that. But there are also decisions made for other reasons, like that. Or an artist will say, well, a lot of times I've had artists say, well, I've got to lock the camera, right? And you just go, no, you don't have to lock the camera. We're budgeted for a shot. Move the camera. I can move the camera? Of course. Sometimes you say, well, we're only budgeted for pans, but go ahead and pan all you want. Other times, like, no, you can do whatever you want. We're fine. We've got it all tracked out. We know how, what we can do, what you can't do. And conversely, you'll look at it and you go, well, this is going to be a matte painting if you shoot like this, and it's not budgeted. We don't have this. This is supposed to be visual effects. And I just tell them, is it okay if you just go like that with the camera? And they go, yeah, that'll work. And they go down, and you save them $1,000 or whatever
Mm,
it's going to be.
yeah,
So, as on-set supervisor, on a non-big show, if you're not choreographing one of 600 visual effects like Game of Thrones or something, that's your big job. Is you're there to save them money. If that means more work for you, so be it. But if it's going to mean less work for you and it's not going to lose them any money, that also saves them money.
mm,
So you got to make those decisions really quick,
yeah.
because
Wow.
there's always, no, you could be in a pre-production meeting and you got everything planned out. Everything's going to be perfect. Of course, nothing survives when you're on set. Everything is different. I've done crowd sequences. It's a three-camera show. You've got your main camera, your B camera, and then a C camera that's kind of doing whatever it's going to do. And there was a big crowd, and I needed to do the crowd replication. And it was going to be, there's some people on stage and the backs of all these characters, and they're supposed to applaud and do this and that. And I think we had enough people to do 4 batches of stuff. And that's going to take me at least 20 minutes, maybe 30, 35 minutes to do. And I needed a camera way in the back to do that. And the assistant director's like, okay, we're running behind, we're running behind. And then they had to move on and shoot the next scene, which is an interior on the building. And I said, okay, well, I can do this with the third camera. And they go, no, no, we need all the cameras. So suddenly I'm stuck with, all these people and nothing to shoot with. And the funny thing with that particular show, which I won't name, um, we're doing the setup of all the visual effects, and they go, okay, so just insert the crowd footage. And I was a little snarky, and I said, "Okay, just send us over the footage." And of course, I know there is no footage. Fortunately, I'd gone to the back and shot stills, and I was able to, kind of, pantomime people, and it wasn't the best, but it was the only solution we had at the time. So that's an example of, a well laid out plan that simply didn't survive, because ultimately the director has to quote make it's called making their day, right? They have to get all their shots done, otherwise everything gets pushed and the production goes way over budget. So visual effects is the first thing to go, because they aren't on the quote on the day. They don't see the fallout from that, because that's going to happen weeks, months later. And so it's the first thing to go. And you could tell them, you're kicking the can down the road. It's going to be a much more expensive. And as long as you're telling the production manager those things on the spot, they could say, "All right, we'll talk about it." So at least they, you've raised the flag. You know that it's going to be more expensive later. That's often an argument later on, but at least you have a trail.
Yeah. Wow. You were at Zoic now, and you did Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the last episode. Then did you work on Battlestar Galactica as well, right?
Yes. After Enterprise, I got hired at Zoic to do Serenity, which
Oh
is the
yes.
Firefly movie. So everyone that worked on Firefly are friends of mine. I'd worked them before, and they had just finished Firefly, and they were actually no, they had just done the miniseries Battlestar Galactica, and were about halfway through the first season. But that's when they were going to do. They found out they were going to do a Firefly movie, and so their team was kind of split, and it was a big show for Zoic. So I came into and I supervised the big space battle, when the Reavers come in and the Serenity's flying through and the Federation alliance ships are attacking. It's just mayhem.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. Really cool shots, by
Yeah,
the way.
I know that credit. I mean, everyone did a lot of shots on that, but I mean, Kyle Toucher did a lot of great previs for that. He wasn't the only one. There was, I think, Aaron Granger, Gabe Kroner. A lot of people worked on that sequence. I'm
Mm.
not naming, but those are the ones I remember who had some really great previs already when I had come in. But uh, that was a really, really heavy show. We were really taxed. We worked 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. And
Oh.
yeah, we were all burned out. In fact, we said we had one day off in 2 months, and that was during the summer when the AC broke and the machines couldn't run. That was like the only day we had off for a long time. So
Wow.
that was a tough time. I mean, we the movie was pretty cool. We had a good time with the movie, but we were all really burned out. I think I took a few months off after that.
Mm. Yeah.
But after that, that's when season 2 of Battlestar Galactica came out and was starting. And so then they kept me on to supervise that, for Zoic. I mean, Gary Hutzel, the late great Gary Hutzel, was the supervisor on the show, and but they brought me in to run the visual effects in house, for Zoic, and so I came in, and a lot of that team was already established as well. But we had a lot of fun. They taught me a lot of things of what was going on in the show, how they did a lot of stuff. Um, but I got to lay out a lot of shots for that. That was a lot of fun.
Mm.
The big thing we did on my season was the battle for resurrection. So the resurrection ship comes in, and they have this plan with the Pegasus to um, blow it up. That was pretty cool,
Yeah.
and it was we had a lot of crazy stuff on that show. There actually aren't too many visual effects shots by a modern standpoint, but what we did was pretty epic. I mean, we had a real time HD playback machine in the screening room at Zoic, and we would make sure it stayed on there, because if we needed inspiration later, we just go in and watch it.
Ah, nice. I think I heard this rumor that there was on one of these award shows where I think it was Dennis Murin from
Mhm.
ILM who was super impressed by how much stuff you could do with Battlestar Galactica on a fairly short time turnaround, and how good it looked as well. He was very impressed with that. Have you heard that story?
It sounds vaguely familiar. I can't speak to it because I don't know. I if that happened, I would guess that was earlier in the show, like during the miniseries, because they Lee Stringer built some amazing models for that show. He was in charge of all the modeling, and he built the Galactica, and that stuff was just fantastic. And so when I did season 2, not only, of course, did we have a great team, but I always said, we stood on the shoulders of the giants who did season 1 and the miniseries, because most of those assets were already there and they were already beautiful.
Yeah.
So we did some innovations on some of the stuff, and we built I helped design the Pegasus. I didn't build it. That was mostly Jose Perez, I think, who was built the Pegasus. But other than that, and of course a few other things, some of the spaceships, some of the smaller stuff, I mean, the majority of that show was already built. So we had, basically we had all the toys to already play with. So we were, got to smash toys like 8-year-olds and, and put in some amazing explosions. And we had our lead compositor was a guy by the name of Lane Jolly, who I think is that one of the leads that probably runs the compositing at PSYOP at this point. But just a brilliant compositor. And he would say stuff like, could I get a map that goes left to right on this ship, up and down on this ship? And sometimes we'd go, I don't know why you'd want that. But, he'd just come out with this amazing sequence. And Lane and I shared an office for a while, and it was pretty cool because I would do layouts of explosions in After Effects. I mean, now you can move nulls to and from LightWave and After Effects, but back then you couldn't. But Jared Davis had written a script that allowed that to happen. So you could have nulls and they come in After Effects. And so I would take the CG animatics and I would lay in explosions where I wanted them. That if they weren't being done in LightWave, if they weren't being done with voxels or something, we lay in all this stuff and show it to Lane. And then, okay, I see what you mean. And then a lot of times I would actually render that stuff out in After Effects with Mad Object. So he would have explosion pass. And then he would, of course, make them beautiful. And, using Z depth and all this stuff. We had elements of smoke, just ambient smoke. And he would use the luminance channel of the explosions and blow them way out and just use that to print in the smoke. And so you just have this miasma that would only show with the explosions. And of course, in space, you wouldn't have any of that, but of course, it looked awesome. I got the inspiration for that from watching the footage of the siege of Baghdad. They had all that night vision footage, and when the explosion would go off, you would just see what was in the air. So we called this element, it was a 4K element of smoke, we call it Baghdad smoke. And I would just say, yeah, Lane, you're going to do the Baghdad smoke, right? He's like, yeah, don't worry. So it wasn't just a flare or a glow. It was just this, you see stuff, little hints of missile trails. And he did a great job with all that.
Cool. So after that, what happened then?
Let's see. After Battlestar Galactica, at the end of season 2, they went in-house. And a lot of the guys from Zoic ended up there and did some great stuff. And I actually, and many years later, ended up working there for a little while on, I forgot the name of the show. It was I can't remember. It was like a future, and the big thing was the
big arch thing.
The St. Louis Arch, Defiance.
Defiance. Yes.
I don't think I've actually seen it, but I do remember seeing the special effects for that. Yes, it looked cool.
Yeah, that was a pretty crazy stuff. When I got there and saw what they were pulling off, how much of it was CG. It was just, they were insane. It was mostly Gary Hutzel and Doug Drexler, another titan of visual effects, going back to before Dick Tracy. I mean, he won an Oscar for Dick Tracy. Has moved on doing art art department for Star Trek and the Orville and Battlestar Galactica. And he built the NX-01 Enterprise. I mean, that guy, you should get him on the show too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know he was. I think it was Gary Hatzel who actually contacted him after Enterprise was ended or something like that, and he was like,
Yeah. I don't know when they started working together. I know they worked together on Deep Space Nine.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, they went way back. Yeah, he brought him on to I think season 3, and
mm,
they just went into the stratosphere. You have the beautiful Pegasus coming into Atmo and all that stuff. That's when they started winning Emmys. I think they were nominated 5 times, but it wasn't until season 3 and 4 that they won, which I think they should have won for at least the miniseries. And jealously, they should have won for season 2, but
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, they could have easily won all 5 seasons. Um,
yeah.
but
I, 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 I remember also that they actually outsourced some stuff to a studio in Canada called Atmosphere.
yes, Atmosphere. They worked on season 1 too. They were
Oh,
usually usually Zoic and Atmosphere. I don't think it was an even split, but usually it was. This is a Zoic episode. This is an Atmosphere episode. Uh,
okay.
the big one that I remember in season 1 as a fan was, I think, the episode where they're doing a run on an enemy installation on over a red planet. I think that was an Atmosphere episode. I know in season 2 there were a few episodes. Episode 5, I'm pretty sure, was Atmosphere.
Mm.
Um, I just every once in a while an episode number comes in my head.
It was a long time since I watched the series. To be honest, yeah,
Oh, yeah, well, me too. I mean, it's coming up on 20 years ago,
yeah,
that series.
Mm.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
tell by
Yeah.
all of our beards.
Getting grey now. Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Wow.
When I was prepping for this interview, and I just go, wow, that was 25 years ago that this happened or that happened. And you forget just how much stuff you do in this business.
Yeah, yeah. Time flies. I mean,
Yeah.
I just
And if you're
realized
on,
I just realized that I've been working at Massive Entertainment now for 16 plus years. You know, it's
that's
like
that's that's 2 lifetimes in visual effects to be at one place that long.
yeah, it's
I mean, I
crazy.
think I worked at Zoic on 4 different occasions over probably 15 years, but just, here, maybe once for a couple of years, but another time only for 3 weeks, just on and off.
Yeah.
You you jump around. But let's see. Uh, After Battlestar Galactica, we did a lot of other little shows. I mean, usually back then, a lot of times you're on one show, and then you're on another show a little bit, or maybe you're split on 2 shows. I
Mm.
did some on-set work for some pilots, but the next big thing for that, I think, was Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, that show ran a couple seasons, but I left after the pilot. But I did a lot of work on the pilot, and there was a lot of design work on that Terminator because it had to be its own thing because the T-800, or it was the T-101, I guess it was. I forget the lore of that show, but
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's
Schwarzenegger Terminator is owned by either Cameron or Tippett or someone. It's a trademark design, so it had to be different enough to be its own thing, but still be a Terminator. So there
oh,
was a
okay.
lot of back and forth on that, and I think a lot of the parts of the show that don't hold up were because so much was put into that model. The focus kind of fell away into that thing, but there was a lot of fun in that. Um, After that, I went kind of independent. Did a lot of work at home. I worked on a lot of music videos after that, um, for a small company, and then after that, I came back to Zoic to work on V,
Oh,
the
the
remake of
remake.
V.
Yeah.
So that was back to the big one show. And music videos. By then the bottom had fallen out of music videos. So it used to be you had these amazing budgets. It was like commercials. And then it
Mm.
was like, all right, we got $5,000, 2 weeks. and 85 shots to do. You know, so you're just type, 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 type. But then you're back, back to not feature, but back to network shows. And you're like, oh, okay. Now I've got 15 guys to do this with. I did the pilot of that, and then there was kind of a hiatus, and then I did the first 3 episodes. There was another hiatus. At that point, I left Zoic and worked at a boutique company called MFX. They were a place up by Warner Brothers, which was also close to home, which was great.
Nice.
But they did a lot of stuff, but their focus was actually sitcoms, multi-camera sitcoms. 4 cameras,
Ah,
that's and I came on to do some hour-long dramas for them. I think it was Miami Medical. They did Dexter, so I did a lot of stuff for Dexter.
ah,
But I did a surprising amount of visual effects for sitcoms. I mean, obviously, one of their fortes was car comps. Guys driving over a blue screen, and you do that. So I supervised a lot of those, but that was kind of their thing. But most of that was 2D. Although we started doing the system where I would build a hood of a car, and so you get all the reflections off the car, or if they do a turn, you can see the reflections rake.
mm,
Um, that was kind of cool to be a little, like, okay, well, Charlie Sheen's car has this, or a little bump there, or this and that, and that was kind of a cool thing that we did. But there were a lot of blue screen sets in the visual effects on sitcoms. Not the main sets, because if you've ever been on a sitcom studio or seen one, there you have your main set, and usually it goes into another room, and then you might have a third set of a different location. Like for Big Bang Theory, it would be, there's the main room. That's why they're always in that room. You across the hall, you have the real hall, you have the elevator, you have Penny's place, and there's usually a third set. I think usually that was the comic book store, and that's why they always go to those places.
mm.
And then there's usually something they call the swing set, which is an area off in the corner, away from the audience, where they'll shoot, um, the set of the week or something, or a set that's only in a few episodes, over the course of the season, and they'll build it and tear it down, build it and tear it down, and that's usually way off in the corner. And all studios, for safety, have a fire lane, so it's about 6 feet wide that you can't build on. So
Mm.
you have these sets that are just tiny, and so what do? They put a blue screen up, and you fill it in. And a lot of times that blue screen is right up against the set because they don't have any room, because the main set is right next to it. And the blue screen isn't lit very well because you got to get the lights in there. It's very, very tight. And, so we built shopping malls, we built neighborhoods, we built a lot of stuff. Like there was a show called Mike and Molly with Melissa McCarthy, and they had a house out in Chicago. And they would, a lot of times they'd have shots out on the porch, and they'd walk up to the porch. That neighborhood doesn't exist. They have what's called the translight, which is a big, big backing that you see outside of windows and stuff. But you have this little swing set, and even if you hung the translight, it would be like this, raked corner thing. It wouldn't look like anything. It would look like a shower curtain. And you'll see that sometimes on a TV show. If you pay attention to what's outside windows, you'll often see the buildings be kind of skewed, or they'll bend. That's because the translight's back there and the angle's not quite right. But so they couldn't do that on these. So they would put blue screen there, and we would build a digital neighborhood of Chicago style houses and cars driving
Mm.
through. If it's in the winter, we put digital snow in and, track it all in. And there might be one shot, there might be 15 shots. And for that show, but they even wanted breath, so we would do CG breath when they breathed out.
Wow.
And you're coming up on 50, 60 visual effects shots on a sitcom. And and here's the other thing with sitcoms that's kind of fun is they shoot the episode live for a studio audience to get the laughs, of course. But for visual effects and for other things like stuff on the swing set, or stuff they shoot on location, or something that's going to require a lot of moving parts, whether it's a big set piece, or they're going to use water or an animal. They'll shoot on a pre-day, which is usually the day, sometimes 2 days, but usually the day before the big shoot. It's usually on a Thursday. Well, for that show, it was on a Thursday because they would air on Monday. Um, so on those pre-days, those are usually the days where visual effects happen. Not always, but usually. So that's the days that we're usually on set. So I'll go in, I'll supervise a scene, and they'll run away, and they'll edit it. And later on that day, we'll get a bunch of temp edits, and they want visual effects for the next day. Because what they do with the live audience is the scenes that aren't being played live, they show on monitors to get the laugh track, but they need visual effects in them. So we have less than a day to turn around a visual effects scene for a show to show to a live audience.
Oh,
And yeah, so usually that stuff is temp. Sometimes it's got to be thrown out to throw away and start over because you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. But a few times we actually had stuff that was final, or we want to change one thing. Um, we had a great team of veterans that would rip through that stuff. We had flame artists, they had me on CG, and sometimes I'd do comping in After Effects, and we would just tear through that stuff and have to get it to them. Like, we might get it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we would have to have it back to them by 2:30 the next day.
wow.
And sometimes, usually you have a week before it airs, but sometimes the show, like I said, sometimes they'll shoot on Thursday and air on a Monday. Usually you have a week, sometimes more, but sometimes you were really, really pressed, and we would have to deliver stuff within 24 hours of air. And sometimes that wouldn't happen, and they would foot the bill to beam the show via satellite to the central locations to do the air. So that means, like, if it's less than 24 hours, you have to do that. So you're rushing to get stuff out. We've done visual effects the day of air, and it's
Wow.
it's crazy. Yeah. We would always joke that, we're chasing the satellite on this one, but sometimes we'd say, oh yeah, we're chasing the West Coast feed, because it would air in New York at one time, and it would air in LA at 3 hours later. And we would joke like, yeah, we got notes between between those two, so we have to finish it in the next 2 hours.
Wow.
I don't know if that ever happened, but we would joke about it. But we did chase the satellite several times.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole new ball game on multi camera stuff. It was an eye opener, but because also you're shooting four cameras simultaneously. Sometimes three, but often four, A, B, C, and X. But imagine if you're on a set, you've got a light from four cameras, so it's lit like theater.
Mm.
Um, and it's also played like theater because you often in front of a live audience. It's some people say it looks fake. It doesn't, quote, look fake. It's not cinematic. It's a whole different ballgame. It is more like theater. Um, there's a different set of rules, and of course a different set of lighting. Theater lighting is not usually very dramatic. It's usually fairly flat because you have pools of where actors need to be, but they have to be lit from everywhere. The downside of that is if you have a blue screen and you're lit for everything, the background has to kind of look that way, unless it's distant background. So a lot of times the client would say, well, this doesn't look real. It's because your source doesn't look real. And if we made the background look real, it would look fake because it would match up.
Mm.
So there was a lot of back and forth in that. You always have to match a plate, and sometimes the lighting isn't good on plate. But if it's a single camera shot or a movie or a commercial, it's done by a single camera cinematographer, so it's lit, it's sculpted for a certain way, and you can match that. It doesn't always work, but that's generally the thing. In a multi-camera show, it's, for lack of a better word, flat. It's not flat, it is sculpted, but it's different. There's 3 or 4 shadows on the ground, and you have to have multiple light sources, but it also has to look real. So there was a lot of dancing going on between that stuff. But we would
Yeah.
build a lot of digital sets. Sometimes for the car scenes, sometimes the backgrounds were digital because they couldn't shoot something a certain way, or they didn't have the footage, or nothing worked. Um, or if it's a period show, for example, we did a show called Aquarius. Um, it's supposed to be late '60s LA. So if you see a car, it's got to be a period car.
Yeah.
And if it was shot live on a trailer, you know, if you're driving a mile loop around something, you don't quote control that street. You have police cars or police bikes that kind of keep traffic at bay, but you don't own the whole street. You didn't buy it out. So all the cars parked on the streets are you know, mid 2000 vehicles. So we have to go in and put in Studebakers and old Chevys and all that stuff. So we had a collection of LightWave cars that we have to track in for everything. Um, or if you are shooting on location, usually they buy out the block, sometimes 2 blocks. So you own that space and you can put period cars in. First off, there's only so many period cars that you can get or afford. So you have to fill that out with other cars. Or if you look 2 blocks down, there's a uh, modern stoplight and modern city. But you got to, take out some of the buildings. You've got to put in overhead power lines. You've got to put period cars in, fill out all the other cars. So there's a lot of that as well. But we, for the sitcom work, we did several CG things. I remember I shot in How I Met Your Mother. It was a flashback, and one of the characters was driving the wrong way on the freeway. And so obviously you're not going to get that. So we built a freeway with some buildings and all the cars swerving out of the way, going the other way. And that happens more than you think.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually. So you were saying how you rode quite close to the line for production on some of those shows. I know in some of the new streaming services, they're now starting to actually swap bits out when they realize they've made a mistake. Has that ever happened to you guys? Where you've maybe made an episode and then someone spotted a big error, and then the official DVD might actually have it slightly differently, or you've done it later, or you've published it in LA time, and you swapped out the shot or something like that.
Uh, yes. I don't know if I've done it for streaming where they updated the stream,
Yeah.
but we have had, especially on sitcoms, because back then they would release DVD sets for all these shows. It was a good revenue stream. But we did have notes come in and say, well, we'll fix this for the DVD. Either they didn't think it looked good enough, or they wanted to change something, or they saw an error, like, the famous coffee cup in Game of Thrones. There was stuff like that that would air wrong, and we would have to go fix it. It didn't happen very often in my experience, but it has happened a few times.
But at least you could go back and fix it.
Yeah, and if it's a long ago fix, a lot of times, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but a lot of times archiving doesn't work. So you may try to pull something out from another show, and either it's gone, or sometimes, a lot of times it's perfect. But sometimes you're like, we didn't get this object, or this object never got archived, or we're using
Yeah.
a version of software that's 2 years old and it does not compatible anymore. You're using another render engine now. Like if you pull up a LightWave asset, if you pulled up the Enterprise, the NX-01, it's all in standard shading modes. Very few people would do any. If you're not doing a matte object, you're pretty much using, the TBR type rendering, or you're rendering an Octane. So that stuff isn't compatible. Or if it is, you've got to go back and figure out how you did that. Like, how do I do layers in LightWave? You forget. Or, oh yeah, we made this luminous so you could see it.
Yeah, I remember talking about archiving. I think it was when when they did Babylon 5, The Lost Tales. which was
Yeah,
uh, do you remember that one? And they were sort of like, okay, there's no models, so I think they downloaded things from Aminet, you know,
probably.
Amiga models that they then uprest and made rebuilt the Babylon 5 station and a couple of ships here and there, just to just to and I mean it looks really good. I think it was Atmosphere that did that as well. Um,
It sounds like that, and we've been on I've been on shows where something is lost, and back then, the security wasn't as a big deal, especially there wasn't like Marvel isn't notoriously bad. I mean, I've seen clients say, yeah, I do work for the DoD, and the security is harder for Marvel than it is for the DoD. But back then, artists would have archives of stuff at their house.
yeah.
You know, some still do. So if oh crap, we lost the Enterprise, so it's like I'll bring it tomorrow. You know, or on a hard drive at home, or I have it local, or there's that famous story of Toy Story 2. I don't know if you guys heard that story.
No, I know about Toy Story 2, but not.
Most of the way through production on Toy Story 2, look this up. They lost the entire movie. You
Ah,
know, basically, if you know Unix, someone said, RM's, root dot star, and the whole thing was gone. They lost all of it, and
all assets and everything,
everything,
render.
the whole movie.
Oh, Jesus! Wow. Okay.
Yeah, multi-million-dollar movie. And again, look up the story because they're going to get all the details right. But this one, I don't know who she was. I don't know if she was a lead, or I think she was a lead or one of the producers or something. For some reason, she had a copy of the movie, of everything, like a snapshot on a computer at home. It was maybe a couple weeks old, but she had it, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, this is great!" So she drove back home. They wrapped the computer in every piece of plastic and pillows they could, lovingly put it in the car, buckled it up, and drove really slow all the way back to the studio, and were able to recover the movie. I highly
Wow.
recommend, if you don't know the story, to look it up on the internet. It's mind blowing. We've done that, not as dramatically and not as uh, big stakes, but definitely we've lost models and had individuals be able to bring them back one way or another.
What other software have you learned over the years, except for Lightwave? Let's say compositing software. I know you mentioned After Effects, but have there been other 3D software as well that you looked into and learned?
I've played with Blender, played with Houdini, I played with Maya, briefly played with Max. I never really got into any of them.
Mm,
When I Unreal as well, which I still hope to get into. I always joke, in the past, especially, that okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to learn Maya, or I'm going to sit down, I'm going to learn Houdini. I start getting into it. I start going, oh, this is pretty cool. And then I get a job, and jump back to Lightwave because I can do the job in a day or 2 days or a week.
yeah, yeah,
And then you kind of forget you were working in Houdini or working in. I mean, obviously there are jobs that are handmade for Houdini. They're perfect for something like that. It's an amazing piece of software. But you know, the other times when I'm trying to learn a new 3D program, and part of it's my own laziness, but I I get a Lightwave job. It's almost like washing your car before it rains. And I'm at the point now where since I do a lot of freelance work, and or the company I work for now, which is called Totale.
yep,
It's Totale.media if you want to look at them. We do a lot of commercials and some TV shows, but um, I kind of got to build the 3D portion of this boutique. So um, in doing that, if I want to work in Lightwave, I want to work in Lightwave. And if we
yeah.
need something that tailors to Houdini's strengths or Maya's strengths, it's really only been Houdini. I know a lot of Houdini artists, so I bring them in to do it. but the majority of that's been in LightWave. For 2D, I learned After Effects. I think I started using it on Starship Troopers back in the late 90s. Um, I didn't really get into it until Dune. I think is when I really started using it. But that's been my go-to. I did do some work in Fusion, but I always go back to After Effects. And since I've kind of avoided the larger studios and don't want to pay for it, I haven't used new. I've tinkered with it a couple times, but I never really got into it because I buy the software I use, and so I don't like to pay these huge license fees or spend thousands on software. And I've gotten I can get 95% of what I need out of Lightwave and After Effects, so I do that. I taught myself. I'm still not very good at it, but for the last 15 years or so, I've used Synthesize for 3D tracking, which is an amazing piece of software. I know Dr. Anderson, I think, just sold it to Maxon or something. So good luck to him. I hope that it makes it even better. But yeah, that's a brilliant piece of software. Um, I've used Particle Illusion for many years. With its old 2D versions, I did a lot of breath, a lot of particle effects. Some of the effects in Battlestar Galactica are particle illusion.
Oh,
Um, and have I use that, and in its new it's now works in After Effects natively, not natively, but it plugs right in and is 3D now. So I've used that. I'm not the best modeler. I usually hire people who are much better and faster than me at models
mm,
to do the modeling.
makes sense.
And yeah, always find someone better than you and use them.
Yep.
My but So I've done some modeling. Most of the modeling I do would be a modeler. I tinkered a little bit with ZBrush. I didn't really get into it. I've done a little more in 3D Coat, but still, I usually defer to better people to do that kind of thing. Advanced compositing. I know a lot of great compositors, both in Flame, both in After Effects and Nuke. And if it's something I just can't really do that well, they end up doing it. A
Mm.
lot of the guys I worked with at NFX over those many years, were flame artists. So, I got people like Rick Cortez, who's, an excellent flame artist. I go to him all the time. And so does the guy I work for in Totale. Totale, he, ends up doing a lot of great stuff for that.
Cool. Is Flame actually used still?
It is still used. I think it's, Nuke obviously kind of stole their thunder.
Yeah, yeah.
But it is still used. It went software only, so it's much more affordable, and a lot of
Ah,
people will use them on Mac computers.
okay.
But yeah, so it's not necessarily Linux based anymore. You can use them on Macs, and it's license based now. So you don't have to have the hardware. So these guys all work out of their home. And I know some studios still have it as their backbone. Um, I'm not sure, but I think like hydraulics is still heavily flame based. I can't. I never worked in hydraulics. So I don't know for sure, but at least in the recent past, they definitely have a huge flame.
Do you use GPU rendering nowadays with Octane, or is it a mix with
It's a
like?
mix. Uh, I do a lot of commercial work these days, and since I render at home most of the time,
Mhm.
I end up working mostly in Octane. I still do native stuff. Sometimes I even jump back and forth in a project. Um, but yeah, a lot of the work these days is in Octane, simply for speed.
Yeah,
Um, you
yeah.
know, and, I've got two, what are these, 3090 cards with a network link, and you can get through stuff pretty quick. And the VPR render is amazing. I love it.
Mm.
One advantage I think of Octane, other than the GPU speed, is that you get light bounces really really fast. And of course, in a software render, that's going to take a lot more time.
Yeah.
But I've done a lot of ads for wristwatch companies. So you do these macros, these beauty shots, kind of like a car shot, of light raking over things, and you can get comparable results in both renders.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's phenomenal what the VPR render does.
Mm,
And like I said, a lot of times I move to Octane Simple for speed.
yeah. If you were given an unlimited budget, like unlimited budget, and this is before Lightwave Digital bought uh, Lightwave from Viz RT, but you get an unlimited budget. You can only spend it on buying Lightwave and owning it. What would you do with Lightwave if that was presented to you?
Well, unlimited, I'd make it do everything. But I think in today's environment, um, and it's kind of been true for many years, but especially now, there are so many programs who are so far ahead of the curve on so many different things that any piece of software is either going to be like a spoke, meaning you go there and you do that one thing, or you're going to be a hub and you're going to talk to all those things really well,
Mm,
and um, and be able to integrate them and then do your own thing. You take something like Unreal. Unreal is an ecosystem, and they rely on a lot of things to do things. Obviously, there's a lot of hooks to Houdini. People write whole level design tools where you can just drag out cities. And Lightwave started doing that. When they got their, I think when the hub was. I know the hub is bigger than the hub between Lightwave and Modeler,
mm,
but I would, if I was in charge, and I think Andrew's probably thinking along similar lines, the hub is very, very powerful, or it should be if it isn't. And it should talk to all these things. I
mm,
don't think, even if you say a limited budget, let's say, there are limits.
yeah.
I don't think Lightwave is going to be better than Houdini at what Houdini does best.
No.
But it doesn't need to. All it needs to do is leverage Houdini. Go use Houdini for the amazing stuff. I know a lot of people used to joke Houdini was the great plugin for Lightwave,
Yeah, yeah.
and that could be true of anything.
Yeah.
Lightwave doesn't need a composite because there are amazing compositors. For me, it's After Effects. A lot of people, it's Nuke, even Flame, Fusion, all those great things. Lightwave is not going to have all these amazing keying tools, all these beautiful little things that make your color perfect, that make your shot look real. It doesn't need to. It just needs to talk to them. It needs to know
Mm,
here's where cameras are, here's where objects are. It might be nice if it maybe if it had more integration. So let's say use a polygon, and that's the same as your layer in After Effects or your node in Nuke. And so you could play with those things a little more interactively. But it's about leveraging another program. It. I think Lightwave should have all those tools themselves to some extent, because someone like me who uses predominantly Lightwave for everything, it's good to be able to do almost everything in Lightwave. I draw the line at compositing, but even though I have done shots recently that just use a background image of a live action plate and put in Lightwave, I've
oh
done that
yeah.
as little as a couple of years ago. You used to do it all the time, but now I have done it recently. We even know I have After Effects right here. Um, but something like an amazing water tool. I think Lightwave should have a water tool. It should have a fluid system. It should have a really good particle system. It doesn't need to have the best of any of those things, because it's never going to be better than someone who's doing it as their sole focus.
Yeah, true.
I don't care how many developers you have, unless you're buying that company. It doesn't need to have real time fire, because Embergem's already years down the track on that kind of thing. But if it talks to Embergen seamlessly, you know, if cameras are interactive on both, if the VDBs come in, if you render it out and those two go to After Effects or a compositor program and your EXRs are up at the fire, you know, let the best, just like with modeling. I hire modelers or better compositors than me. let the better software for one particular thing do it, and just be the best at talking to those things and leveraging those things.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like I said, it should still do those things. It just doesn't have to do them the best. It just has to be able to leverage those things the best.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good answer, actually.
I mean, I don't need LightWave I don't need to build a video game in L-script or Python.
No, exactly.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would just build my stuff in LightWave and make sure it works, interactively with Unreal, or well, not Unity anymore, but to Unreal, and build the game in Unreal.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
LightWave, had VR access and you could talk to Unreal and build in LightWave in VR, awesome. I got my VR headset right here. I would love to use it.
Yeah.
They started that when, several years ago when, they were using the Sony controllers,
Ah,
to run
yeah,
camera,
yeah.
kind of like, trying to go on the avatar virtual camera thing. That's all great, but, I think it's Chilton Webb, I think they built some mocap systems for the Quest. Why not a modeler? You know, you'd be in the modeling space and, you want to build a room. That's great. You could just pull up rooms, bring in assets and move them around. You want to do a very realistic camera move and you've got a set and you're in the set, you start walking around. There you go. There's your virtual camera.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Cool.
that's also my a little bit of my bias because I love VR. So I
Yeah.
would love to. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer in something like Unreal, but even something like Lightwave, interactive modeling, you don't want to do everything in VR. I think the idea of the metaverse and wearing VR at work for all day, that I think that's a non-starter. But being able to do something like, I want to see how this looks in VR, pop, you're in, or I
Mm.
want to build something that's ergonomic, put it on, and you know where your things are. Like, okay, this is where my typewriter should be. Typewriter. This is where my keyboard should be. Here's where the monitor should be. I want to build something, or I want to pull this. You could be sculpting with your hands. That kind of thing is valuable.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a again. It should be a tool.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. What is the number one feature that you would want to see coming into Lightwave as soon as possible?
New features or updated features?
It's the same thing, isn't it?
Because
P-
updated features, I think the particle system
Mhm.
and bullet. If both those were updated, that'd be great because they're a little behind the times, and I think having those things talk together would be awesome because then you can
Mm.
put bullet instances and, well, I guess you can kind of do that already, but a little kind of.
kind of not.
Kind of, but but you can attach instances to particles with size, so you can kind of get vague things. But that kind of stuff, bringing all that up, make it all multi-threaded, make sure, if you did, like, say, if you do hard effects, is very slow.
Yeah, yeah.
Bullet is much faster. Still has some stuff. I think a little better bullet integration, upgraded particle system. The cameras are great already. The renderer could be a little faster, but it's a beautiful renderer. I think some more control over the denoiser would be
Ah.
nice.
Mm.
It's a black box right now, and I found out you're not supposed to do this, but I often use the GPU denoiser in motion.
Yes.
So
It a
I
bit.
know I got a lot of those looks when
Like,
I did that.
does it,
No, if there's very, very minute detail, like if you're doing micro bumps and you're close,
right.
yeah, you get that swirly swim noise, but it doesn't swim so much. It just looks wrong, but it's pretty temporally consistent.
Mm.
Didn't
But
didn't Dennis integrate the Odin denoiser? I've never actually
uh,
played with it because I could never get it to work.
I'll have to look at that and see. Because the software denoiser is nice, but it tends to defocus too much, in my opinion. So
Hmm.
some kind of a more robust denoiser would definitely make me use the VPR renderer more. because the sampling rates get so high that speed becomes an issue.
Hmm.
But let's see. Like I said, cameras are great. Lights are great. In fact, I think lights in LightWave are better than lights in Octane. I think you have much more control. They're
Mm.
much more intuitive.
Yep.
Uh, I mean, even IES lights, I think are nicer in layout in VPR. Just they seem to behave more intuitively. I don't even know why it is because those should be identical, but maybe it's just me, but it seems more like it. Yeah, so yeah, the FX portions of it. A lot of people would say a lot of modeling things, but I don't use Modeler enough or deeply enough to really get into the nitty gritty of what it's doing better
Mm.
and what it's doing worse. I do think having more robust camera tools in Modeler. I know you can match layout view, but I would like to have a little more control over that. Or maybe it's more modeling tools when you're in layout because I do a lot of plate matching. So
Ah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, oh, speaking of that, being able to zoom in on the viewport, like you could with time, and why you can't, how you can with Octane. That would be a big issue if you could zoom in VPR but still maintain your camera.
Yeah, that would. Yeah, that's a good thing.
What you
Yeah.
end up doing is you just get a perspective camera or a secondary camera that's your look camera, and you move that around, but it doesn't give you what you're looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
When that happened in F Prime, it was amazing. We had the Enterprise, and you could zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Window. Oh, there's a little guy. Let's make sure. And then you go all the way back out. And being able to do that in Octane is great. So that would be a nice tool, and not hopefully not too hard to develop. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, just general performance increases beyond that. I mean, so much of Lightwave is robust. I don't do a lot of character animation these days. So, the rigging is, I don't speak to that much because it's not big in my current view, right?
Mm.
I know rigging and character animation tools and IKFK and spline animation are big things. That would be great. I don't run into them as much right these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
So
The end of the day,
personally,
it's an honest question where we're not trying to trick you. Those are the
no,
things
no,
that
I'm just
you
saying
find
I know that
important.
those
It's
huge important things for Lightwave as a whole. Because having used them, I know that there'd be a lot of improvement, especially in the you know being able to adjust deformations on the fly. I know what was that plugin that was it was briefly a third party and then it got integrated. The
Yeah.
morph,
Metamorphic.
yeah, that's a nice start.
Yeah.
To make corrective morphs and things like that on the fly. That stuff, maybe a global brush tool where you could do things like that. You could paint something. You could, paint instances, all that.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
not all, but maybe as a global brush tool that the same brush tool for different things, whatever mode you're in. It's the same kind of interface. You have the same brush move, maybe even shaped brushes that aren't they aren't all circles. Like if you're going to use like metamorphic, to have a stencil or something would be
Mm.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all those tools that does lead me to something else. And Octane has a rudimentary version of this, but uh, in Lightwave you can have primitive shapes that have uh, uh, a, infinite deformations, subpixel
Yeah. Yeah.
deformations.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There is a subpixel deformation in Lightwave, but it's still tied to subdivision level or geometry level. So
you technically have them with the primitives.
with the primitive, but geometry, it's a
Yeah.
little new.
Yeah.
So that would be nice to have some kind of, I don't know if that needs to be go through VDB volumes or something like that, but
Yeah.
again,
But
I'm not a good.
subpixel displacement is something that what I think what you're talking about
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah, but accurate subpixel displacement, not
Yeah,
one
sure.
that's that would be nice because I do every once in a while, I want to add detail to this, or like I do a lot. Like I said, a lot of products or a wristwatch will have a little, embedded logo. It'd be much better to just take the texture and drop that in, than it would be to have to model that in.
Ah, yeah, true.
And you could do that in Octane. It's a little clunky, and it definitely the edges get a little weird, but it works for a lot of things. But having that in Lightwave would be awesome.
Yeah. Is there anything we didn't ask that you would like to talk about? Or
No,
is
no.
there
I mean,
anything that we talked about that you would want to expand on, maybe?
no. I mean, we talked about kind of the golden era of script to screen, which was great, and
Yeah.
the lack. I mean, I do have to say that I do have a lot of freedom in the jobs I'm doing now. I don't like to work at big studios, and let's face it, right now with a purely lightwave workflow, it's hard to work within a studio environment unless you're branched off. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just the way it is right now. Hopefully that'll change, but you know, uh, being the head of a small department and where I could make it lightwave centric if I want, especially since I'm usually the only guy or one of very few. It is great to kind of have be able to do that again. Like you want to
Mm.
make a spot, me and the owner of the company, the producer, Corey Milne, another plug. Um, we can work out a spot on our own, or how a visual effect is going to work on the show, and we kind of do a little bit of that script to screen, and it's nice to be able to do that again for things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually an interesting segue into, Lightweight used to be this really, really powerful software used on everything regarding
Yeah,
to
especially television.
television.
With big in features as well, but
Yeah.
television really, really sung because
Yeah.
it was a sweet spot between budget, accessibility, and speed.
Yeah.
And that's it's a great place to be. You don't have to be the premier software at ILM. You're not going to be because they're going to write their own stuff anyway.
Yeah. But do you have any take on why this shift happened? Like why studios sort of stopped using Lightwave and going for.
Um,
I think we touched on it a little bit, but let's see. I want to poke your brain on this.
I think the two biggest reasons are, um, I think some of these bigger companies. I mean, at the time, I think it was mostly Maya and Max. I mean, Autodesk. They have huge development teams, and they can write a million features, a million code, and for better or for worse, because a lot of people will say their update system is, you're paying every year and you're not always getting anything. That's a different issue. They're developing huge things, and they're developing huge things with enterprise licenses for large studios that have enough money to pay for all that. And that also makes people think, oh, well, Maya's the way to go because so and so is using it. We got to use it. So that ate and some into it. I think at the time that was also the rise of bespoke visual effects learning, schools. Other than like the Dave School,
Mm.
uh, you had people who learned. I mean, back when I was there, you taught yourself because there was no visual effects training.
Yeah.
But you were a film trainer, or you made it up in your basement. But when you started having film schools, you'd have people like Autodesk supply the software. So you have
Mm.
juniors coming in who learned Maya or learned Max or whatever. These days maybe there's a lot of Blender because it's free. But if that's what your incoming workforce already uses, and if someone like Autodesk is saying, well, we're the big supplier for these big studios. We're also the ones, supplying the software to the next generation. They've kind of got a vertical monopoly on this thing, and so more and more people start using Maya. I'm only using Maya as an example, but they start using something like Maya, and it's also got a lot of features because it has a lot of development budget,
Yep.
and so it starts pulling away. And when Lightwave was big, New Tech was probably investing a lot into it, but as everyone knows, New Tech's big moneymaker was the TriCaster, and the video production, the live video production aspect of things. So kind of like someone like Amazon Prime Video is not Amazon's moneymaker. So they don't have, like the strike thing, they don't have to worry as much about the strike because they're making billions on what Amazon does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same with New Tech. They could they don't have to have the development budget for Lightwave, even to Lightwave's detriment, because it wasn't their moneymaker. And when it got sold to Vizart, of course, Vizart probably didn't even care. What's this? you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm really glad that Lightwave Digital is back, because now it's focused on Lightwave. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be honest, it's an uphill battle. But if you aim to the right target, which is going to be the boutiques, it doesn't have to be hobbyists or single users, but the boutiques show that here's where it's going to fit into a larger environment. It talks to everything, and it leverages everything, and it's fast. Then you're going to start developing a user base for it, and the
Yep.
user base will lead to another user base. The next generation user bases. Obviously, trying to get it in schools, that's an uphill battle too, but that will help. Beat people at their own game. And I think when I could be wrong, but I think when Moto started, that's kind of what they wanted to be. They wanted to, they tried to, they quickly went into just the modeling space, but they wanted to be the modeler that everyone needs, because it had, it read everything, and it, except Max files, it read everything and it
Yeah.
exported everything.
Yeah.
No one can read Max. but but they were trying to do that central hub, or it plays nice with everyone. That is where I think Lightwave can come back into the industry at large.
Mm.
Obviously, single users, it's a no-brainer, because it's relatively cheap, it's intuitive, and like I said, it should do everything at least to some level. It
Yep.
doesn't have to be the best. But if it also can plug into a larger environment, an established environment, some of these studios have spent millions of dollars on their pipelines. They're not going to suddenly go, well, let's have a Lightwave division, or let's switch to Lightwave. They're not going to do that. It's not economically sound. Even if it works, it's not sound. It's too much of a risk. But if they could bring in Lightwave because it's going to do this or that, I started using Embergen on projects because it works and it's fast.
Yeah.
If a studio said, "Oh, Lightwave, it will talk to our two things, and it'll, you could animate it." Oh, and they go, "Oh, we could render it. Oh, it's fast. We can just plug in, it'll render an Octane. We're using Octane, aren't we?" And there you go. And if Lightwave starts using even more renderers, it's a render heavy industry now. A lot of programs are becoming agnostic. You know,
Yeah. True.
if Lightwave worked really well with Redshift, or if it worked well with, I don't know what the renderers today are. I think Redshift's big.
Yeah.
It got bought out by Cinema though.
Yeah. If it'll play with all these things,
Yeah.
great. Because then it'll go from a small group of people to people evangelizing it. I think that's one reason it happened. Not just like with Babylon 5 and Sequest. I think you had people at studios looking over and seeing the guy in the corner, pumping out shots.
Yeah.
That's the reason it became big.
True.
And maybe it can do that again. I hope so.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also one of the things that I think most people have said so far is that it's very hard to invent new stuff. So
Yeah.
make the workflow be smarter and better than others as well.
Yeah. Lightwave always been fast.
Yeah.
Even if the render isn't fast, which it's not too bad. It's fine. It could be faster, sure. But the process is fast. I can make a shot really fast
Yeah.
and I can iterate it pretty quickly. Yeah, things like scene referencing is very important, especially if you've got more than one person. If you have an animation department, stuff like that is very important. But the idea is I can get a camera into a shot, I can make a shot, I can light it, it looks great, done.
Yeah.
You know, I could do a visual effects shot in a week. I could do a visual effects shot in 2 hours. It just depends on time and budget, and
Yeah,
of course,
exactly.
but
Yeah.
you could do that. Doing a shot really fast in another program, yes, you can. But I think Lightwave has a big advantage in a lot of those spaces.
It's very direct and hands-on.
Yeah, a big studio, especially, you know, time is really is money. Like I was saying on a film set, if they go, this is going to take a week going through our development pipeline, but so and so, as he could do it tomorrow, maybe that's a win. It's
Yeah.
not going to happen in ILM, but it might happen at a mid-range studio.
Well, ILM actually had a rebel unit.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, I was just going to say right when I said that it did happen. They did have that, but but it's got to at this point in history, I think it's got to start again, and that's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, true. What do you think will help the community to be and stay positive, constructive, engaging, and energetic?
Well, a lot of them already are. If you're still using Lightwave now, you're positive about it. Actually, even if you're negative about it, you're positive about it because you're like, I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
The way it is. And we all look like this. So to that point, it'd be nice to get younger people into it. Because we're all going to die at some point. So
True.
let's get, let's get some 20-year-olds using it, and that does go back to the education aspect. But um, keeping it positive, from a practical standpoint, keeping that connection to the user base, and that's one reason Lightwave was so great, back in the day, because people would interact with the studios. So keeping, especially when you're in heavy development, uh, keeping the user base involved, not even yes with what they want, but keeping them informed on what's happening, and maybe trying to open that up, get some press out there to get people who are lightwave curious, for lack of a better word. Maybe people who have moved to, we had some users there who probably don't use lightwave anymore, but they did for many years, and they were, giving their input from heavy users of of other programs, and it's very productive to have that. But
Yeah, yeah,
the fact that that person was even there, it means that there's a lot of lightwave users who don't use lightwave, or they don't use it much, or maybe they only use it at home, who are interested and might come in. And beyond that, get word of mouth out to anyone who goes, oh, there's a fast tool that does a lot of cool stuff. You know, yeah, they're having a meeting on so and so. Come on in, come in the Discord channel or whatever. Uh, and get them in on it. And of course, once things are stable enough to be new client facing, get some eval versions out there, or even you know uh not crippled versions, but like Houdini Apprentice, think it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
It's cheap or free, and it's got limits, like standard def or something, but or some of the tools don't work, but you can definitely learn it, or definitely get into it and see why it's popular, or why the people who use it really like it. you know
yeah,
get it into the hands of users who aren't already sold,
yeah,
because you have to. I mean, Lightwave's user base at this point is small, and it needs to grow. So you got to, first off, you got to get eyes on it, and then you got to convert people enough that they're going to want to invest in it, and
yeah, yeah,
that means using it, and kind of hopefully they'll see the magic of why people like me have been using it since the 90s.
yeah, exactly. And
You
one
know,
of the things though that I want to mention here is that I think Maya, and I think this is part of its success, I guess, is that they had the personal learning edition, which was totally free. You didn't have to
yeah.
pay for it.
At this point, you need. you need a free a free tier. It doesn't need to be you know it has to have limitations obviously because you need someone to buy the program, but
Yeah.
it needs a free tier because Blender's there. Blender's free. Young
Yes.
kids love Blender because it's free. So you don't have to beat Blender at its own game. You don't have to be better than Blender about everything, but you do have to be, you do have to provide something that Blender doesn't that people are willing to pay for.
Yeah.
And the
True.
first step is to show people what that is. And the first step of that is getting them on the machine, getting them on the program.
Yeah.
So yeah, there has to be a PLE version. I would suggest that it does, load and save. It needs to render. You need to be able to see stuff in motion. So, if it's watermark, I mean, a useful watermark has to be in the corner anyway. And to do that, that could be taken out. So don't watermark it. Just give it a resolution limit. You know,
I actually have a funny story from the school when I where actually it was taught. I started using Lightwave back in on the Amiga, but
right?
then I realized that in order for me to be hireable here in Sweden, because in Sweden Lightwave has never been a big software like in the States, so I had to learn Maya. So I actually went to this school called School of Future Entertainment, where it's sort of prepares you learning Maya and also both for games and visual effects and that
Mm.
stuff. So I started being like an animator in Maya. But the funny thing is that we had super lots of problems getting the license server for the Maya thing working. So we contacted, this is so funny, we contacted Autodesk and they sent us out pirate copies.
That's where I thought this was going. And yep,
Well, we had paid for it, so but
yeah,
their solution was just use the pirated version.
I've heard. I mean, I've known studios that have legit licenses, but on the day, they're still using cracks. Not they're all paid for, but the what's on the machine are cracks because they don't want to deal with license servers going down.
Exactly. I just found this so funny, and I've never actually had to think about that regarding Lightwave, because you install it and then you drag,
Yeah, you got your license file or your dongle.
or you had now later on the license file and you just drag it and
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
works.
and I know that's not popular from a developer standpoint, but it is great. Like I've got Lightwave on I think 3 machines, counting my laptop, and,
Yeah,
yes, I can't use it on more than 1 machine, but that's of course, I only paid for that license. So, but I have it. If this machine goes down, I could load up my other machine and work on that machine. Or if I'm out somewhere, these machines are off on location, I can load up Lightwave on my laptop.
yeah, and also you can actually install Lightwave on a USB stick. Try to do that on,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Autodesk software. It's
yeah,
not going to work.
absolutely. I mean, I was shooting a low budget creature feature in New Mexico, and I our creature modeler Jesse Toves was in Burbank, and he was creating the idea was that the head of this creature was going to be practical, this great practical creature, but then it was this big 6-legged cockroachy thing with a scorpion tail, and he was building that. I was on set with the head. I used my phone to cyber scan the head. I sent that with my laptop. And I actually emailed it on my phone to Jesse at the studio. He attached it to the creature, pretty rough, but attached to the creature. Sent it back to me. I loaded it in Modeler, make sure it worked. I emailed it to my phone, and then I had a little AR app on my phone. I had the creature and zoomed it to about the size I wanted it, and showed the director. So this is what your creature's looking like, and he's like, oh. You could see it right there in the studio walking around it, and this was all like within an hour
Mm.
of doing the scan, and he's like, "This is amazing." And so that kind of stuff is just a little bit of magic that just everyone's happy, and it's so cool and also the fact that I was using like 3 different devices. I didn't have internet access on the studio, but I had my phone, and my phone, like emailing it with my phone.
So cool. So cool. Yeah. So, do you have any questions, Andrew? Otherwise, I just have the last magical question.
I don't off the top of my head. It's been very fascinating. I think you've said an awful lot of things that I would already want to ask myself. Really, is there any exciting projects that you're working on right now? Maybe, but maybe you can't talk about them.
There is like I said, the last big show that we did that's aired, so I can talk about, was the Terminal List with Chris Pratt
Oh,
through
Mhm.
Totale. We did Totale. We did a bunch of most of it was compositing, but I did use a lot of LightWave. Like we built some. We was shooting on a tarmac, looking at some coffins. So we had some C-17 cargo planes and some Black Hawk helicopters. So we did a lot of that, laying
Cool.
those out. Those are all LightWave. He was walking on inside the plane, and they only had a set of a C-130 Hercules, which is that 4-prop plane,
Hmm.
but it's about half the size of the C-17. It's super narrow. And so he walked on it, and they're like, "This won't fly. I mean, this won't work. It's too small." So we had to roto him out and then put in the interior of a C-17 with the door and everything. So he's basically walking on nothing. Um, we tried to light up some of the lights. We cheated some of the lights so they kind of lined up to the light sources that were on the set. And that was several shots. I mean, full camera moves with narrow depth of field, and that was all done in lightweight. We're doing another project now, which is it's not it's it's a high profile the show. I don't know how high profile it is, but it's a high profile franchise, which I can't talk about, or
Yep.
I don't should talk about. That's going to come out real soon. That we use some lightwave on. Like I said, a lot of the stuff I'm doing these days is commercial work, which you can see on the website. A big we do a lot of work for Movado watch subsidiary called Movement. Do a lot of their watches. We've done some cosmetic work in the past. If you look on the website, there's actually some. We did a cool thing. They had a Christmas promotion for their cosmetics, and we did a series of old Rankin Bass style, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, like stop motion animation. Look like little dioramas with sparkly snow and snowflake shaped snow, and they're all. I did it at 12 FPS, and little. It's animating things, and they're having all this fun. That was kind of a kick because, of course,
mm.
as an animator, I was a big fan of Rankin Bass, and being able to emulate that was a lot of fun. Yeah, yeah. There's some shows coming up, and we just did a feature with Lightwave.
Oh.
I don't know when that's coming out, but there's some people doing a chase scene on a fire escape, and there was a 7-story building that they were shooting at, which is supposed to be 12. Well, actually,
Mm.
it was a 6-story building. They need to be 12 stories. So in Lightwave, we of course extended it up. A lot of handheld shots, and there were no fire escapes. So all the fire escape stuff is on a set where they built maybe 3 levels of fire escape. So we have to extend the building and all the shots. So that was all Lightwave. Um, and we're doing some TV shows here and there. A lot, like I said, a lot of commercial work. A
Mm.
lot of stuff for social media as well, and some commercials. We did some. I did a whole stadium package for SoFi Stadium in LA. They This company bought out all the. There's hundreds of screens, and they have like these banners like 128 pixels by 12,000 pixels.
Wow.
Several of them. And they're all different formats and all different sizes, and so you have all the stuff moving in. And that was a combination of motion graphics and After Effects and lightweight elements. So for a
Cool.
whole game, everything you're seeing. You'll see them in sports shows. The LED screens, but all that was lightweight for a while. Well,
Oh,
combination of
cool.
graphics and lightweight.
There'll be a lot of things where you wouldn't even realize, as you say, you're doing backplates on comedy shows, and you wouldn't even think, oh, there's somebody sitting behind a desk programming that
Yeah,
in Lightwave, or in it's more complicated than you think. It's so seamless these days, isn't it?
it is. and you run into someone, at a restaurant or at a pool, and they'll say, "What do you do?" And I do visual effects, and you have to explain what visual effects are, of course. And they go, "Oh, you worked on anything I might have seen?" And I'm like, "I've worked on so many different genres." It used to be, "Oh, you like Star Trek," or "Oh, you like space shows," but now it's like, what are your top 5 shows? I probably worked on at least one of them because The Big Bang Theory is like the biggest show in the world. I did that for years. A lot of
Mhm.
people like Dexter. I worked on that for years. I've now, and a lot of this was because when I worked at MFX, it was such a 180 from all the genre shows I was doing, that it's just such a wide range of things. Everyone in the world knows Big Bang Theory. Everyone in the
Yeah.
world knows Two and a Half Men because of Charlie Sheen. But But, uh, you don't think about visual effects in those things, but, you tell people that, if they mention those shows, "Oh, yeah, I worked on those." I mean, yes, obviously, it's one small facet from my standpoint, but it's just amazing how it's everywhere.
Mm. You mentioned in the form that you are a gamer, and
Oh, yeah.
you actually have a VR headset. So what games do you play in VR right now?
Uh, on the PC, which actually, frankly, I don't play much on the PC because the standalone Quest is so fun. Graphics are less of an issue in VR because of the immersion. The fact that when it syncs up to your
Yeah.
your equilibrium, and it's surprising what you can get away with. But on the PC, I love playing Star Wars Squadrons because you're flying
Ah,
it.
yes.
How much better could that be? You can see your oils. You look back and you see your R2 unit. It's insane. But on the Quest, a lot of it is bonding with my buddies in LA and my family. My brother lives in Florida.
Hmm.
I'm in San Diego in California, so it's great to be able to load up and play a game of golf or play a game of Dungeons
Mm.
and Dragons. There's a game called Demio, which is basically a tabletop D&D style game, and you can play that for hours, and you're the presence of the other players. It's not just chat. You
Yeah.
feel like they're there and
Yeah.
you're talking. It's just like hanging out with the guys, and you can have a little adult cocktail, and it's hard to get it under the headset, but you can you're just shooting the breeze and having a great time. So a lot of golf, a lot of tabletop. But of course, during the pandemic, I actually you know lost some weight. A lot of people gained weight. I actually lost weight because I played so much Beat Saber.
Oh.
I was doing it 30 minutes a day, and that was my exercise. And I'm horrible at exercise, but if you could play Dance Dance Revolution as a Jedi, I mean, come on.
Ah, that's so funny. The thing is that when I saw your name, Wyrmcutter, I was actually
Yes,
thinking about the Dungeons and Dragons, that you actually kill a lot of worms. Those are smaller dragons, right?
right. Well, wyverns are dragons with only 2 legs, right? A dragon has 4 legs and 2 wings. A
Yes.
wyvern is like the dragons you see on Game of Thrones or Dragon Slayer with 2 legs and 2 wings, which would make more sense, like a
Ah, okay,
bat.
okay, yeah.
And then a worm, I believe, is a winged serpent. So, or no legs, no wings. I forget, but there are
Depends
ways
on
of
your
doing
mythology, but yes.
there's I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule, but I believe it's something like that.
Because that was I thought that was what the name was based on. That you have been slaying so many of those in a Dungeons and Dragons game, but apparently you mentioned that that was actually based on but you
Dune,
did
yeah.
Dune, right?
Well, yeah, we were
I
in
think
the
so.
studio at Area 51, and we started using well, before that we used to use ICQ, right? When those were all numbers.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And then we started using, that was when ICQ started getting hacked by Russian bots all the time. So we switched it to AIM,
Mhm.
AOL Messenger, right?
Yep.
I think it's also maybe some of the producers used it. And so we need usernames. Enter a username. And I'm like, I don't know. And at the time, I was literally cutting up the sandworm model,
Ah.
big plates and assigning UVs and building the sandworm model. So I'm like, I'm cutting a worm cutter. And I'm not sure that may have been taken. or for some reason I said, okay, Wyrmcutter, like the mythical word. There you are. I didn't want to be, Wyrmcutter 7. So,
yeah. I hate that.
and I don't know if that was the case, but I think Wyrmcutter was taken for some reason. So
Yeah.
now I'm wondering why.
That's it. It sounds cooler.
That's my handle now on everything. It's my handle on Quest. It's my handle on PlayStation Network. It's my handle here on Discord. That's just it's stuck. But yeah, it goes back to what I was doing the moment I had to make a username.
Yeah, my username, Cageman, it's actually, if I take my real Swedish last name, Burman, that actually translates into Cage Man.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You probably had some interesting ancestors then.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, my name is Johnny Prisoner.
Anyways, last question now. Who would you want to see on this podcast? I know that you sort of mentioned some names here, but let's drop them now.
Well, let's see. I mean, people with interesting histories with LightWave, Glenn Campbell and Tim McHugh. Definitely Glenn Campbell, because he's still actively involved with LightWave. I mean, he's running all the visual effects of Asylum Studios these days. Like I said, Glenn's got stories back to Battlestar Galactica, the original, Tron, Buck Rogers, Spaceballs. He's done it all. I mean, that guy is amazing.
I've only heard of a few of those.
Richard Payne, Dickie Payne, like he goes back to the early Amiga days. An excellent modeler. He's been working for years. He's got the best beard of us all. I think his beard is older than most people.
Even even cooler than Enotobians here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it's got it's got the kind of the goatee thing, but it's long. I think it's longer than your beard. Okay, about the same. Not as wide.
No. Well, it makes it look longer. If I trim mine down, see.
Yeah. Okay, it's a wash. It's a tie.
We're gonna have a beer chat if he comes on. Sorted.
Let's have you guys can measure him off.
Oh God! What a funny.
Drexler, his career is so varied that you would end up talking about everything except LightWave. But he started as a makeup artist, but he's done Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, the Orville, Picard, so many things. So he's got stories forever. You'll be on with him for 24 hours, just like with Glenn. Some great old school LightWave. Yeah, from Babylon 5 through Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica, like Lee Stringer, excellent modeler. Emil Smith, who's been doing, he's kind of like me in a parallel universe. He's done everything. We've crossed paths several times. We actually went to college together, even though we didn't really know each other. We've like worked on some of the same shows, but our careers have done like this. So he's the person to talk to. I'll probably think of 10 more the moment I get off. But those guys are all guys with great history, and especially the Glenn and Doug are just, they got stories forever.
Yeah. And
of course, if you can land Dick Van Dyke, come on.
Oh yeah, that would be cool. But yeah, I mean, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for.
I'm really glad. I'm glad you guys are doing this and getting the word out, and I hope it continues. And I'll be watching.
Good luck with the stuff that you're doing right now.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll be chatting, I'm sure, online. It's sometime soon, but wonderful.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Thank you all for watching and listening to this month's episode. Be sure to tune in next time so that you don't miss out on all the goodies we've got for you. In the meantime, if you have any news stories you'd like us to know about, you can reach us in the comment section or send an email to lightwavedigest@gmail.com with the word news in the subject line. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Your engagement is really important to us, so thanks in advance for your support. So until next month, always light the wave.